There's been a lot of discussions recently that the COVID-19 vaccines have caused a high number of deaths. Fox News anchor Tucker Carlson recently said that a total of 3,362 people apparently died after getting the COVID-19 vaccines in the United States. He cited the CDC's Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. So we wanted to verify, does the CDC's database confirm deaths caused by COVID-19 vaccines? With Verify, we tell you our sources first and foremost. We went straight to the FDA and CDC, which operate the database. Now, before we get into the data, let's talk about the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, or more simply, VAERS. The purpose of VAERS is to detect signals of possible side effects or other negative impacts associated with vaccines. This includes people who died after getting the COVID-19 vaccine. As of May 6th, that number comes out to 3,442. However, there is a significant disclaimer on the database's website. It says, note that the inclusion of events in VAERS data does not imply causality. In other words, even though a case might be listed as a death connected to the COVID-19 vaccine, that does not mean the death was caused by the vaccine. And here's another disclaimer about VAERS. It relies heavily on self-reporting, meaning anyone can report an adverse event to the database. Because the data included in VAERS is not verified, and because it does not confirm causality, the answer to our question is no. The CDC's database does not confirm deaths were caused by COVID-19 vaccines. Any claim that more than 3,000 people have died from the COVID-19 vaccine is false and misleading. If you see or hear something you want verified, reach out to us at verify@wfaa.com.